like you're speaking directly to my Aries heart. Hey, little doubt weed, I need you to understand that I see you. You're building a story, you're building a narrative, and every step of that is important, not just the finished product. What's up, guys? Welcome back. So today, I was going to film a favorites at the end of the month. Groundbreaking. But we're at the end of August. We're into Virgo season now. Yesterday was the new moon. I think we're all feeling a little bit raw. It seems to be the common sentiment of the people that I've been talking to, and myself included. And I thought that I would kind of take advantage of that vulnerability and answer you guys' mental health and self-help questions. Finally, I put it on my Instagram stories. I polled you guys for questions on this 2 different times, so I've got a mother load of questions. I'm gonna try and get through as many of them as I can, but I think that some of them are really similar, which is also helpful. And I am mid-peel, so I think we can all agree that I have never looked better. My face is raw. We're feeling raw. We're just going to chase that vibe today. So yeah, guys, let's go ahead and jump in. I have a feeling this is going to be a very long video. First of all, I want to thank you guys for even asking me these questions. I know if you're new here, you're probably like, why do I care what she thinks? Because I'm not any kind of psychiatrist or psychologist or clinician or yoga instructor. I've just done a lot of work on myself. I've had a lot of little crying breakdowns on camera about how my life was feeling really low. And I've learned so much about the chemical imbalances in my body and things like that. But yeah, in sharing my stories over the years, I feel like it's resonated with a lot of people. I get a lot of DMs about it, so I figured I would just do one big video, and this does not have to be the be-all, end-all of it. We can kind of continue this as a series, but part of my channel, a big part of my channel, is it's not just about makeup, it's about beauty, and that includes inner beauty, and that includes getting to know ourselves and love ourselves, and so that is what this video is going to be about today, hopefully. Okay, Love and Be Loved asks tips on how to move forward and deal with heartbreak. I thought this person was forever. Whew, boy. Okay, so breakups are hard because you have gotten to know yourself as part of something that included someone else. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are incomplete without them. So some people go through their entire lives, I was like this, where from about age 15, I felt like really empty. You know, at age 15, you feel pretty empty. And I felt like the easiest thing to do was to kind of fill that void with another person. And so I just jumped into a relationship when I was 15. I was like so excited to finally get a boyfriend, you know, get first kiss, first everything. And I just coasted through all the way to like 20 in long-term relationships because I didn't love myself enough or like know how to self-actualize enough to be enough to fill that void for myself. Not to say that everyone's like that. You could have been a perfectly healthy, whole human being before you got in that relationship and you're just feeling really empty now. The solution to all of it is to reacquaint yourself with yourself. And I actually think that this is a really good question to start this whole video off because I think that the big theme of self-care and self-love and the project that is our lives is being in a relationship with yourself, right? You have to be your own soulmate, your own muse, your own inspiration, your own everything, and that's gonna wax and wane. You can't always be perfect. My personal exercise when I finally got dumped for the last time at like age 20 and had to just face the music was that I needed to learn how to hang out with myself. So I would take myself to music shows. I would take myself out to dinner. I would take myself to movies and things like that. And I remember people telling me, they're like, it's really weird. You just like show up to shows by yourself. You're like not with a group of friends. And I was like, well, I'm doing what I want to do. Enjoying live music, which is what I enjoy doing, or I'm going to a movie that I wanted to see. I don't necessarily need somebody to go with me to do that. And I know that that's not totally unheard of to do, but what it does is it puts you back in a mindset of freedom, that being single and being independent means freedom, not that you're missing something from your life. You then are this person who is completely whole on your own, and that vibrates out. People can feel that. That's like part of your presence is I don't need someone, and honestly, it makes people want to be around you more. So I don't know if that answers your question of how to get over that specific person though. I will quote Ira Glass in saying, over it comes like a thief in the night. You'll get hung up for a really long time, and then one day you'll just be past it. And that part of it, you just gotta be patient with, but the self-love portion of it does make it a lot easier. Peel made this guy pop up. Oh, baby, you don't know what you're in for yet. It's about to get seismic. Sevda24 asks, how do you pull yourself back to normal after letting yourself be sad for a moment? So there are two schools of thought here. One is like the shock therapy route, and I highly suggest watching Kiki G's, what does she call it? Punch dancing or fight dancing video, where she talks about how she will put herself under a comforter, set a timer for like 10 minutes. That's when she gets to wallow and be sad. And then she bursts forth with her noise canceling headphones on and this like empowering playlist and just punch dances until she feels better. And like that is her personal healing ceremony, and that is for some people. She's a Virgo, I don't know if that helps, but as an Aries, I feel so entitled to my feelings all the time. I'm always like, if I'm sad, I am the most unique type of sad. No one has ever been this kind of sad before. I am special. I am always the best, even if it's the best at being sad. And so it's hard for me to distill it down to some like, you know, ceremony of how I fix it. But when I have allowed myself to be sad, which I totally understand, like when you say allowed yourself to be sad, it sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like it's a weakness, you know, I've allowed myself to be weak. It's not, because when you are in a positive trajectory of getting to know yourself, you start to understand your own triggers, right? And so you do have mindfulness in real time that you can recognize that stuff as it's happening. And so you say, okay, I've kind of saved up for this sadness. First of all, let it happen. You gotta feel through those feelings. And so yes, a good cry is going to like be a monkey on your back until you let it happen. Some people I have heard, they will just watch a sad movie and get it all out. Just whatever will trigger you to make you cry if you really need to cry. But when you've pulled yourself back out of it, I think that the best way for me to move forward is to feel like I have a takeaway. And usually that comes in the form of journaling. And I know journaling can always sound like, it sounds like meditating, right? Oh, you just meditate. And everybody's like, look, I've tried meditating. It's boring. It's like you sit down and do journaling, you're like, what am I gonna write down? So journaling to me, the usefulness of it is to sit there and have a conversation with myself, but it slows me down because I have to write it down. I'm definitely a words person. When I can take something and distill it down into a really good mantra or turn of phrase or something like that, I feel like I can then take that and put it back in the library. Not on a shelf, we're not compartmentalizing, but I can say, okay, I can close that book for today, take that lesson and move forward. And for me, journaling does that. Instead of feeling like you just left all of these loose ends out and then you're scared of the next time that sadness takes hold of you, when you can pull a lesson from it, document it, something that you can refer back to if you want, or at least just that moment of time that you gave yourself to really dedicate to unpacking the sadness and kind of not necessarily solving it, but solving for it, understanding what the components were, understanding what the missing variable was. To get algebraic on you. Okay, Little Pink Bunny asks, favorite songs or artists when dealing with anxiety? I have a weird answer for you, and that is that I don't like listening to music when I am depressed or anxious because I am super, super vulnerable to like music vibes. If I'm going to listen to anything, it has to be lyricless or completely unemotional. I am an emo music lover. Love it. It's how I grew up, it's how I got through high school. But if I listen to that stuff, if I listen to Sunny Day Real Estate while I'm depressed, I will immediately teleport to being back to 15 crying in my bedroom. I just like can't do that to myself. I know me. So, I mean, if I had to pick something, it would be like Duke Ellington, Dizzy Gillespie, like jazz, or literally Michael Bublé. Christmas music. You know what I mean? Something so random that it kind of shocks me back to reality. I will say anything that you decide to listen to in that context, you have to remember that then it's going to implant itself, at least if you're like me, in your memory from that moment on. It's like a smell or anything else, you know, it's sensory. And so you're going to then associate that music with the last time that you were feeling anxious, which isn't like always the best. So I I don't know. I think music's really sacred in that sense, and so I don't actually listen to music to like change my mood. Music almost always makes me sad. Kate Kaniga asks, do you have any kind of self-care schedule? I absolutely do, because I think that mornings are sacred. We've talked about this plenty. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I love to watch the sunrise in the morning. I take pictures of it. I take hyperlapses of it. Sometimes my cat is silhouetted against the sunrise. It's such a beautiful ceremony. I'm also a cardinal sign. We love beginnings. We love fresh starts. Morning is just the ultimate fresh start. Helps me get all of my thoughts together, decide how I'm going to approach the day from like a healthy mindset. And it's so different to me than waking up and just crashing straight into what I have to do that day. Like if I were to wake up at 7:50 to start work at 8, I would be a totally different human being. I have to claim my morning for myself. Evening is a little bit different. I don't really love nighttime, and so I just try and like start to kind of close down early in the evening. I like to just consciously wind down. It's why I don't really drink. It's why I love to cook. I don't want to be out necessarily. It's very rare that I'm like out at dinner or past dinner, and that's just because we're taking care of someone else's dog, if that sounds like an unfamiliar bark to you. But yeah, that's my like daily schedule, you know? And then there's the ad hoc, the journaling. I tend to kind of do those along with the moon cycles. I feel like your full moon is the culmination and the new moon is the clean slate. And I do like to make sure that I do a good like tarot reading for myself or a good like journaling session or meditation or something around that time period, because I feel like we all kind of follow that same energy. If you think that the moon cycles are too woo-woo, guys, we have periods, okay? I mean, the females out there, we have periods. Like, they follow moon cycles. It's not that far-fetched. Oh, I love this one. Jewel Carp asks, what do you do to soothe/harness your own 300-mile-per-hour thought processes? It's like you're speaking directly to my Aries heart. Although most women, and lots of men, are afflicted with this, that 300-mile-an-hour mindset. For me, it has been giving myself the gift of fallibility over time. I think that that million-mile-an-hour thing in your brain has its roots really in perfectionism, because you're usually either past tripping or future tripping. You're going, oh my God, I'm reeling back on a bunch of stuff that just happened, and I'm kind of trying to assess what that means and what people thought about me and these anxious feelings that I need to attach to something. And it can also be future tripping of all the things that you need to do or all the bad things that could happen or things like that. And most of the time, we have enough time to get the things done that we need to get done. And that anxiety, that static that fills in the gaps between what we need to get done is completely unnecessary. We can just turn the TV off and the static stops, and you can have silence in between your tasks. The problem is that we end up self-identifying with our anxious process. And you have to kind of look at yourself with a little bit of tough love in this sense. Like, take a hard look at yourself. We all do. We all do this. We tend to look at our tendencies and say, this is how I am. And then we don't question whether or not we could change it, even though it's not good for us. So let's say you have an anxious attachment to your job. Been there. And you tend to fill in all of the gaps between all of your tasks with, what do my coworkers think about me? Am I doing a good job? Are these people thinking that I'm slacking off? I made this one mistake on an account. Is everyone judging me? Are they talking about me behind my back? Am I ever going to get a raise? Am I in the right job? That kind of thing. And your brain is just, you're spiraling. So the long term of that is to give yourself the gift of imperfection, right? You just say, look, I'm not perfect. No one here is perfect. I need to just keep my head above water and do the best that I can, and that is actually enough. And I need to separate myself from the negative things that I have associated with my personality. This doesn't necessarily belong to me. This tension that I've created, this neural pathway, the way that I process negative feelings, it doesn't have to be this way. I can drive a new neural pathway. Now, in real time, I've learned some really cool tactics from a few different people. One from Brene Brown and one from this, it's like a life coach, psychiatrist, psychologist person that Zoe Sugg always reposts. I can't remember her name, but I will link her below. So one of them, the Brene Brown one, is called tactical breathing or square breathing. So it is 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. So it's like seconds or just beats that you want to count, you know? And it just kind of redisciplines your brain. Your breath is so unbelievably important. It's crazy. I mean, if you really look at like yoga or meditation, the foundation of any of it is that you have to be monitoring your breathing. I've heard it said that if you are doing yoga breath, you're technically doing yoga. The asanas are just like secondary to that. It's all about your breath. It has everything to do with the functioning of your body, your autonomic nervous system, just essentially how you interact with the world has everything to do with your breathing. If you were able to be mindful of your breathing at all times, you would notice how much it changes when you're in an anxious situation. You shallow breathe and you kind of start to fight or flight, feed those things into and you're basically feeding chemicals back into your brain that are reinforcing that like low-key panic mode that can turn into high-key panic mode. The other one that I love this. You take one hand and you put it on your heart, and you take another, like your fingers or whatever, and you put it on the pulse on your neck, and you just, you know, you breathe normally, but you take a second and you notice your heartbeat. And what that does is it brings you back into your body, because you're out here, right? You're spinning out here in the stratosphere. And to bring you back into the presence of your body, into your mortality, I guess. I know that's kind of dark, but really, it puts your feet firmly back on the ground of reality in a way that talking or journaling or whatever can't. Like, you just have to come back into your body, and it really helps to do that. I've also heard left nostril breathing. So, you know, you just kind of hold your nose shut, because this side of your body is said to be associated with your autonomic nervous system versus your parasympathetic nervous system, which is panic mode, essentially. And so you don't give life to that parasympathetic nervous system. Am I getting that right? I just know that the autonomic nervous system is basically everything that is managed by your brain without your consent. You know what I mean? It's automatic. And so you kind of have to let all of your energy go to that automatic nervous system, because that's what heals your body. It knows what to do. And so you bring yourself that healing. You put your energy towards that healing in real time. Okay, so Alexandra Gallinat asks 2 questions that go very well together. One says, tips for trying to overcome body dysmorphia as a young woman today, ! And the next says, and any tips on not letting social media affect mental health negatively? So I feel like coming up in a generation where I didn't have the internet for a large portion of my childhood. We started getting like AOL when I was 9, and I would go in the chat rooms and just get myself into all kinds of strange trouble. Means that I watched social media happen. I saw how stupid it was from the very beginning. The Jeffree Star MySpace of it all, the Warped Tour of it all, the Corey Kennedy of it all. And I got roped into it early on. You know, honestly, the aesthetic in the late 1990s and early 2000s when I was, you know, high school, college, was to be a hot mess and to party really hard. Like, that was like the New York scene that was being perpetuated in my little corner of the internet. And then I realized this is just not something I want to aspire to, because it's unhealthy and these people are miserable. And honestly, even though that was a while ago, the same common thread runs through what you see on the big social media accounts. With the exception, I would say there are a lot of them where it's like people doing really amazing makeup. Like, that's art to me. But if we're talking about the kind of lifestyle content that tends to be really attractive to us, but slowly degrades our self-worth because we're comparing ourselves to it, I need you guys to know, those people, that's their job. They're not going on vacation and enjoying themselves. They might, you know, they might dedicate an entire set of days to enjoying themselves, but when those pictures were taken, that person was at work. That's work. They're not just frolicking on the beach and having fun. They have a photographer that they are paying by the hour to photograph them frolicking on the beach, looking like they're having fun. They ordered that food that there is a picture of. They probably didn't eat it. I've done Not as many as most people, obviously. I'm not that big of an influencer, but I've done my fair share of third-party filmed videos, things where you have to kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again, interviews where you have to keep answering the same question over and over and over again, B-roll, which feels so weird, photo shoots where you have to do things that feel really unnatural because they look good on camera, things like that. I'm telling you guys, the whole job, the whole industry of social media, it's not fun. It's fun because you get to go cool places and you probably get to enjoy yourself off camera, but what you're seeing in someone's Instagram photo is not fun, because if you think about your life, what are you doing when you're having fun? You're not taking pictures of it, you're just busy having fun. Also, if you think that you are the only person comparing yourself to someone on Instagram, let me tell you, those Instagrammers are comparing themselves to other Instagrammers. I don't want to just draw some like broad brush blanket statement that they're all like miserable or something, but they're not immune to it either. So don't look at those people and think, oh, they're perfect, I wish I could be like that, because just because they look good doesn't mean they love themselves. And so you should aspire to loving you, not looking like someone else. And honestly, bottom line, if someone's account makes you feel bad about yourself, unfollow them. Even if it's me. And we have talked about body dysmorphia a few times on my channel. My main tactic, you guys might have heard me say this before, is to, same thing with anything else you're feeling shameful about. Call it what it is, call it into the light. You're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're not liking what you see. You say, I am looking in the mirror and I am not seeing reality. I am comparing myself in my brain to an unrealistic standard of beauty. It's probably someone who has face-tuned their thighs, and that is not reality. And when you call it into the light like that, you say, I am feeling shame because I think that I'm not good enough because I'm comparing myself to something that's not real on social media, or a previous version of myself or a future version of myself. Then it loses all of its power over you. You look at yourself in the mirror and you go, no, this is me. I am a unique being who deserves to exist. I am beautiful. I am unique for a reason. I am not that other person, whether it be a future or past version of myself or another person on social media, for a very specific reason. That is because I have something unique to offer the world, period. Your story is the most precious thing in your life. Don't let someone steal that from you. If you compare yourself to someone else and you aspire to be like someone else, which we're all susceptible to. I'm not perfect either. I'm constantly, because you take inspiration and then that can be like a really slippery slope into comparing yourself. Just being mindful of that, but also don't let some anonymous thing on the internet steal the validity of your story away from you, because that is your most important possession. Miss Twiggy asks, pushing yourself out of a rut of low-key depression and overwhelming anxiety. Okay, so, yeah, girl. I'd love to say I'd never experienced this before. I don't know what you're talking about. Dude, so there are several reasons that this would happen to me. One is seasonal, and we've talked about that. That is just a slog. There are happy lights, there's a lot of self-care, there's some maybe shopping problems that happen in the winter time for me because I just have a really, really hard time dealing when I can't photosynthesize. Outside of that, often there is a reason, okay? And your brain will tend to kind of spin out sometimes and just do the generalized anxiety thing. But unless it's a very situational thing, like you just need to remove yourself from like a panic attack situation, typically, even if it's stupid, which it usually is, it's usually a stupid reason that you're feeling anxious, there's still a reason. I realize I'm not that unique. I can probably apply my experience to this. So it's usually some stupid reason, like you fumbled and said something weird on the phone. You're like talking to some guy that you just started dating and you said like, okay, love you on the way off the phone, and then you're just like, and then you just have like a nervous breakdown. Those kinds of things, stupid or not, tend to be the sorts of things that we spin out on, right? And so you have to go and find those things in your brain garden, and you gotta pull them out by the roots. And you have to acknowledge them and feel through them and call them into the light and say, hey, little doubt weed, I need you to understand that I see you, okay? I see you. I'm not going to ignore you. I'm going to feel through these feelings, and I'm going to take the time that is required to not just snip you or spray you or ignore you. I'm going to actually dig up your roots, and I'm going to pull you out in your entirety, and we're going to address you. And this goes into a much larger arc of small gifts that you give yourself, the time that you dedicate towards your mindfulness, versus large grand gestures. One of you guys commented recently and said, wow, you said things like small gifts to your skin instead of large gestures. That sounds like a relationship. And I was like, there are lots of parallels, yes. And the same goes for learning to love yourself. It is small gifts of time to yourself or whatever your love language is. But if you think about it, those small things, that intermittent mindfulness, that time that you give to yourself, what actually is that? It culminates to a day, which culminates to a week, which culminates to how you're living your life. So if you just break it down into these small moments of taking care of yourself, you're building a much better, happier life for yourself. And those anxious, spinning moments, that really hard depression and anxiety, you can get to know your monster. I personally know that when I feel out of control, I have certain things that my brain goes to try and cling back to control. One of them is food, okay? We all have these things, and that doesn't mean that we're broken or that we're wrong. It just means that we have to get to know our monsters. We all have monsters. We're not perfect. And we heal ourselves from sitting down and actually talking to that monster, much like you would a bully in your life. It's much harder to have that conversation than it is to avoid it. But in the long term, you want to know that this thing can't scare you. It can't come and get you anymore. And the only way to do that is to befriend your evil monster. Borchosaurus Rex, one of my favorites. What's your daily self-care maintenance? Not necessarily a big routine, just daily bits. I kind of already answered this, but I think that one of the biggest things that you start to be able to do is take constant inventory. If you have something that pings up in your brain that you realize kind of hit you in a sore spot, in a vulnerability, make sure that you make a mental note of that and go and address it later. Go journal it out. Go give yourself some time to really think and go, why did that bother me? What part of me did that hit that felt like it was a nerve, that felt like it hurt me? And usually you can trace that back to something that you know about yourself. We'll probably get into talking about like the inner child, but a lot of times it roots back to inner child stuff where you can say, why did that hurt me? Oh, because I built this defense mechanism as a child due to things I was exposed to in my childhood, and it's carried through to adulthood. And that's probably something that I can consciously retire now because it no longer serves me. Okay, and I'm moving to the second iteration of this question a little bit further back. So if you ask questions like, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or something, these are your questions. So Katie June, my girl Katie, what's up, pal? She asks, how do you stay present and enjoy life? I'm an over planner. Help. Oh my gosh. So that can be good, you know, especially if you're like an earth sign or something. It's something that comes really naturally to you. But I do think that over planning is a manifestation of feeling out of control. And that tends to happen because we are future tripping, or we have been hurt in the past and we think that planning is going to help us mitigate future pain, right? And we have to come toe to toe with worst case scenario. How, in whatever situation I'm trying to over plan for, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen that could hit me where it hurts? Because that's probably why you are trying to kind of exercise that sort of control. Understand that that's just a tendency of yours. That's sort of something that you lean on as a defense mechanism, and that it's not real. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's just not real because you don't have that control. And it's just something where if you tend to obsess, just understand that you tend to obsess. Now, being mindful in the moment is a practice. It is a practice. And I think that what happens is you start and you get a taste of it, right? Where you have that moment in you're in traffic or something where you have nothing but time to think about what it is that you're spinning out about, because there's not a bunch of other interruptions and distractions. And you take a second and you actually have the time to think through why something made you feel uncomfortable. Is it something that you did that you thought that you had practiced your way out of? Like, I tend to just be kind of like a run off at the mouth kind of person. And if I don't coach myself going into a group situation, I will just be that person who's just like, blah, here are some things I'm volunteering to this crowd of people because I just want to like shock absorb the awkwardness of a bunch of people in a room together. And so I just tend to, people think I'm drunk. I'm just like, blah. And if I don't prepare myself mentally before I go into a situation, over plan, then I do tend to do that. And so I will sometimes just totally bag on myself after the fact. Be like, why didn't you just, why didn't you just stop yourself from doing that, you stupid idiot? And so when you do the work and you get the chance to actually address that, it doesn't mean that you're gonna fix it. You can't go back in time and change what you did, but to just address it and call it what it is, you get a taste of, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I feel so much better. I recognize what I just did. It's a lot simpler than I wanted to make it because I was surrounding it with a bunch of static and chaos and this steeped in my own shame kind of feeling. And once you kind of pluck it out of that and you say, look, okay, the shame is just kind of like emotional baggage. I'm gonna move that out of the way. What was the actual situation? It wasn't that bad. And then you get this moment where like, I just therapized myself. And that to me, that little taste of having a little bit more control over your moment to moment, because you know that you can check back in with yourself and grow, it makes you want to do more of that. It makes you want to focus your energy back inward and start addressing more things. Start pulling more weeds up at the roots and examining them and having those conversations with yourself. And it helps you be more present because then you don't constantly feel out of control. You feel like you have control in real time because even if something bad happens, you know you have tools in your toolkit to then talk about them with yourself later. Oh my God, dogs. Gracie Face Up says, how do you make the best of a bad living situation, also staying motivated with school and work? So a bad living situation can be horrible. I would say that my defense mechanism when I was in a bad situation, when I didn't have control over it, I just didn't spend a lot of time at home. That's like not ideal, I know. And it is, it's really, really hard. But I think that I have become the uncompromising, hustling, motivated human that I am because I was in situations that I didn't like for so long. And I felt completely entitled to be uncompromising about my happiness. And even if your situation is not perfect now, you can still begin to build yourself as that person who is uncompromising about his or her happiness. For me, it was planning, it was saving money, and it was pouring myself into the things that I really wanted to do. So if it was moving, if I wanted to move out of where I was, it was going and working really hard and making enough money to save up and have that power over my potential, that power over my future, knowing that the next thing that was coming was going to be so exciting and so much better for me that I could plan for that and be excited about it and move to the next thing. Too often, we get very complacent with our situation because it feels so endless, but you can always choose to fill your time with something that is at least stealing a little bit of that independence back, a little bit of that choice back. And that also helped me stay motivated with school and with work because I had to finish, you know what I mean? I had to get done. And honestly, if you hate something, if you truly hate something, figure out how to get out of it sooner rather than later. I know that that's not always possible, but I was in high school and I started going to cosmetology school. I just wanted to figure something out that would take me to the next step. Always working towards the next thing. Don't be afraid to take a side hustle, monetize your extra time in some way where you can kind of gain your independence more quickly. Also, don't let the people around you discourage you because in those situations where you feel like you are, in a bad living situation or you're uncomfortable in school or you're surrounded by people at work who make you feel complacent, when you seek to be excellent, and you seek to exceed the expectations of the people around you, don't expect to be met with encouragement and pride. People are going to try and squash your spirit. It has happened to me more times than I can count. Every time I have tried to kind of ascend to the next tier of my life, level up, if you will, the people on that tier always try to tell you to lower your expectations for yourself because it makes them uncomfortable. It's a referendum on them that you want to ascend from where they are. And especially if you're young and you want to do that, but understand that your potential is yours, and that disapproval from people who don't understand or who fear that kind of motivation, that should motivate you even more. It means that you're doing something that's out of the ordinary. And to me, there's nothing more motivational than being excellent. LOL Goss says, what is your go-to on anxiety-ridden days? Also, what do you do when you feel overly sad? I kind of addressed this already, but my go-to on anxiety-ridden days is to lie down, get whatever I need to get done, go and sit in my beautiful bedroom that I have created this very safe space for myself in, and watch the British Baking Show with my cat on my lap. And anyone who comes in and judges me for laying in my bed at 4:30 in the afternoon can at me, okay? It's self-care. And what do you do when you feel overly sad? I feel through it. It freaking sucks, but like, don't be ashamed to cry. Don't be ashamed to feel sad. You deserve to feel all your feelings. Call them what they are, recognize them, feel through them, don't ignore them or they're just going to like abscess. C. Kilg says, how can I explore? She's been with my channel for so long. I recognize her avatar. You have been here a long time. She says, how can I explore new creative endeavors without self-criticism and perfectionism? Understand, go watch some of my old videos, okay? We come a long way, okay? There is no way to enter something with perfection. Every single one of us has to start. And that's why the Fool is my favorite tarot card, is because you have to enter these new endeavors with this wide-eyed optimism. You have to. You're going to get your knees bashed in. You're going to. And that's just how it is. But you know what? That's part of your story. No one likes a perfect story. Would you read a book that the person was just like, yep, I was born perfect, everything went great, the end? No. We want things that we can learn from, things that we can grow from. Honestly, that's the big secret. The reason that people end up kind of like feeling run down as they get older and older is because we're taken out of school. We're taken out of immersive social situations. We're taken out of environments that force us to keep learning. And so we have to take it upon ourselves to continue learning and growing. And so when you go for a creative endeavor, which, by the way, the fact that you even want to is a giant leap in and of itself. There are so many people who are so risk averse. There's nothing wrong with being risk averse if you're happy, but there are a lot of people who are risk averse who aren't like you and don't even consider taking a creative endeavor, don't even consider going outside their comfort zone. And so you're already one giant step ahead towards what you're trying to get to. And also, if you are hung up on the perfectionism thing, that's very much usually a comparison thing. It's a Sophia Amoruso quote, I believe, or at least she puts it on her Instagram a lot. She says, don't compare your hustle to someone else's highlight reel, because that's what you're seeing on Instagram or on social media, especially if you're being, think about this, if you're being exposed to someone's Instagram or their social media presence that you've never met before and you didn't seek them out, it's probably because they have a very large following and they have hit the mainstream and they're on some kind of like hot list, or they're on your home tab, or they're on your suggested or something like that, and it's because they're already pretty successful. Don't compare yourself to people like that, because they have already done the ugly, hustly, mucky work of getting where they are. Their experience is not going to look anything like yours. It's like if I tried to say, well, I'm only going to make videos like Jenna Marbles. Do you know what would happen? Nothing. Because she earned where she is. She did the right things to build her audience through a creative endeavor that was incredibly true to her. So if I were to try and come in 10 or 11 years later where everything is different and just try and replicate what she did, it wouldn't be true to me, it wouldn't be true to the timing, and it is completely a product of what she has built over time. You're not going to get a really cool, all-encompassing product that someone feels resonates with them, is relatable, builds a community without being vulnerable, without screwing up, without doing stupid stuff sometimes that people feel like they can relate to. You're building a story, you're building a narrative, and every step of that is important, not just the finished product. Little Pink Bunny, they're granted, these are these Q&A like prompts are weeks and weeks apart, so some people asked twice. Do you have panic attacks? If so, what's your routine post-panic attack? Dude, I have like full body panic attacks. Most of the time, they're chemical. I know it sounds weird, but a lot of times it's because I have eaten or consumed something that I shouldn't have, and it throws off my chemicals. So honestly, if you think about it, we're talking about, autonomic parasympathetic nervous system. That's where panic attacks happen, is in your fight or flight response. So if you can separate yourself from that and go, my body is doing this, my brain is spinning, but my body is reacting because this is what evolution has told my body to do in these situations, it helps you kind of come back into your body, and say, all right, this is a thing that's happening, this freaking sucks, I'm spinning out of control, and then you can step back from that and say why. For me, a lot of times it's when I drink, I get outrageously anxious. Sometimes if I have eaten the wrong thing and I've gotten very sick, I will have a panic attack because I feel it's definitely a perfectionism thing where I'm just like, well, I take one risk and I get punished so hard for it. I'm gonna be sick for a week, this is blah, 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 and of course, wasted energy, wasted time, lack of productivity, everything spirals, and because these are all my enemies. I hate not being productive. I think that everybody's triggers are unique, but understand that what's happening to you is chemical, and you can calm yourself down from it, but it doesn't mean that you're broken. Lemon Drop Lopez, my girl, says, do you currently go to therapy or have you ever gone? Feelings, I haven't found one I click with yet. So, yes, I have gone to 2 different therapists. One was like not great. I should have taken it as a sign from the universe that she would kind of blow off our appointments sometimes. It was like not okay. And she just was sort of all over the place. I remember she was one of the people who told me to read Daring Greatly, which was like the book that changed my life. And I feel like the universe spoke through her, because when I came back to her weeks later after I had read it, I was like, that book resonated with me so much. I really feel like a completely different person. And she goes, oh, is it good? And I was like, you haven't read it? And she's like, no, I've just heard really good things. And I was like, girl, bye. Like, I'm out of here. Like, what is your, I don't know. Anyway, she was not a good fit. But I have found a therapist more recently. I don't go to therapy currently because I feel like I was just coming in there and just catching up with her like we were friends. I didn't really need a lot from her at the time. And if I go back to a therapist, I'm still going to go back to her. But she is super holistic. She's a yoga instructor. She's very woo-woo like me. She talks about signs from the universe, crystals. Before I come in there, she reads my horoscope so that she can understand where I am, where my placements are, things like that. Like, she's my girl. And if anyone in Austin needs a recommendation, DM me. The whole office where she works, the people are like that, where they get it, they get it. And I loved speaking with her. It was just so enlightening because it taught me that there is a therapist for everyone. So just like Kaylee said, she hasn't found the right one yet. There is a therapist out there for you. Ask the universe, ask your friends, be specific. For me, I was like, I want someone who is non-religious. I want someone who has experience with eating disorders. Not personally, but knows how to therapize for eating disorders. And I didn't really even know how to ask for someone that was sort of spiritual and woo-woo, but you can do that. You can ask for that. So yeah, be super, super discerning because there is someone out there for you. And if the question also includes, should you go to therapy? If you're even asking yourself that question, and maybe even if you're not, the answer is always yes. If you can find the right therapist, oh my God, therapy is so great. So good, because it helps you hear your thoughts spoken back to you in a way that you can't do for yourself. You just can't. I've also heard it called thought management. It's not a weak thing to consult someone else to help you organize your thoughts and your feelings. And if you come across somebody that does not resonate with you and you don't feel their vibes, just don't go back to them. Therapy's expensive. Don't waste your time. Totally Taryn says, where did you learn about tarot, astrology, and crystals? The internet, mostly, but I have always sort of been drawn to it because I think that humans tend to try to recognize patterns in their lives because we want to, like Katie was saying, plan, prepare, we'd like to protect ourselves, things like that. But I started to notice, because being an Aries, we really, really like to talk about ourselves. We really like to learn about ourselves. And so I've always really liked personality tests, diagnostics, people telling me my tendencies, things like that. I just am very interested in that. But the thing that resonated the most with me was always astrology because I always felt like it was right. I also think that I've always been interested in the occult. Like we had a Ouija board growing up and we always really liked spoopy stuff. I tried like doing a Wicca when I was a kid, you know, back when like Charmed was really popular and everything. All of that has always been very interesting to me because I always liked the idea of magic and things being more than what meets the eye, because this has always felt just kind of like not enough to me, a little bleak, my surroundings, you know? But that translated later on in life to manifestation. And manifestation to me is real. Like I have definitely manifested some crazy, incredible things in my life. And you have to look at your surroundings and say, well, how did all of this happen? How did I get these things? They didn't just happen to me. I manifested them. Everything that is around me, my life, my lifestyle, is a product of things that I felt like I deserved or that were worth working for. And why not harness that? Why not take control of that? I think manifestation is a very practical practice. A practical practice. Quote by Kaki. Applying that tenet at the very basic level, all of those things, divination, tarot cards, things like that, they are all just means of accessing your brain in different ways that help you become more mentally healthy. Astrology, I always call it a cosmic weather report. I can't help but notice that people who are close to me are kind of all feeling similar energies at different times, just in different ways. My sister's a Pisces, my husband's a Piscequarian, my mom is a Virgo, my very, very close friends are mostly Leos, Geminis, and Cancers. And so I understand how they are feeling through the cosmic weather based on what house they're in, what their tendencies are based on their signs, things like that. And to me, those kinds of things really fit together. It is very much like knowing someone's Myers-Briggs to me. It's very much like a personality test. And it helps me understand how the world kind of fits together, how we're all one. And my mother actually said recently, and it's something that I've been wanting to like tattoo on my body, honestly. She just said, I believe in everything. I think I said this in a previous video, but if you weren't there for that, I believe in everything. If you think you saw the Virgin Mary on the top of a mountain in Mexico, you saw the Virgin Mary on the top of a mountain in Mexico. If you believe in ghosts, you saw ghosts. Ghosts are real. I believe in all of it, okay? Like, I'm not here to judge anyone's religious beliefs or their spiritual beliefs or anything. If it's real to you, it's real, and that's what matters. And so when I was like learning about all of this stuff, I realized that it didn't matter whether it's something that someone else thinks is real, because it's not something that really matters to someone else. It matters like whether I feel like putting a cleansing crystal next to my bed makes me sleep better. Who the hell's business is that but mine, you know? Who am I hurting by putting an amethyst next to my bed? Like, nobody. And I think it's pretty. If nothing else, it's really pretty. And it acts as a mental device, I guess, when you're meditating or something like that, to kind of like hold a crystal that is sort of associated with the chakra that you're kind of trying to open up. It always resonated with me. It's something that I've always been interested in. Also, my grandmother was very occult. She was very into that kind of stuff, very, very witchy. And so it's just something that I feel like is kind of in my blood, and I've always been drawn to it. And so I just sought out information wherever I could. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, so Lemon Drop Lopez also asked, have you personally been medicated? Feelings. Oh, Disclaimer, 1, I'm an LLC, don't come for me. 2, talk to your doctor. Okay, I'm not telling anybody to take drugs, I'm not telling anybody to get off drugs. This is not advice. This is just my personal experience. I was on antidepressants for a long time. I did Prozac when I was in college because I was in like a bad relationship and I didn't really know how to handle my feelings, and was able to get off of Prozac as soon as I got out of the relationship. Weird. When I was, like 24, 25, I'm 32 now, I had a very anxious relationship, anxious attachment with my career. I had gone from being a hairstylist to like a blogger to working in a field where everyone else had a degree for it. And I was coming in a little late to the game. I had proven myself because I had the aptitude, but I didn't have the experience to know how to talk about everything with the people. And I had this very much like an anxious attachment means that you need a lot of outside approval to feel like you're doing a good job. And so you're constantly seeking that outside approval, and when you don't get it, you get more and more and more like insecure because you don't feel the confidence coming from the inside, basically. I was feeling super panicky all the time. Like tears were literally like right here at all times. Like I just, and heart palpitations were constant to the point where my body felt like it was trained for it. I would be sitting there at my desk and it could be something that had nothing to do with work. I could think I need to go pick up dog food and my heart would start just like pounding out of my chest, and it was so unfair. And so I just went to my doctor. I was like, I'm losing it. I can't take this anymore. And he was like, okay, we'll put you on Lexapro. Lexapro is like the most, honestly, I mean, this is anecdotal, but just from what I understand, it's one of the most prescribed anti-anxiety antidepressants, and it works. It makes you stop being depressed, it makes you stop being anxious, it makes you stop having heart palpitations. It also makes you stop being able to wake up in the morning, or at least for me. A lot of people are different. A lot of people are different, and I don't want to open that can of worms because if I talk about that kind of stuff, everybody gets in the comments and they're like, oh, that was different for me. Lexapro was different for me. Fine, I have videos about that. Like, I don't want to talk about that. My experience though was that so much of the things that I thought were wrong with me, my inability to control my fight or flight mechanisms, my constant kind of like no warning anxiety, no warning depression, just the crazy peaks and valleys that I was experiencing were actually a product of my birth control. And not everybody's like that. Everybody's different. But for me, getting off of birth control, I was also able to get off of antidepressants because I was basically causing my own problems. Does that mean that I never get depressed? No, it's always right there waiting for me. Does that mean I don't get anxious? No, but I get anxious a lot less. I don't get the heart palpitations anymore. And that's also been a lot of lifestyle change. I think that as you get older, as time passes, you are granted more and more and more freedom to sculpt your life and your daily patterns the way that you want them to be. I asked for what I wanted. I went to my job and I said, look, spending 2 hours a day in traffic is a bad use of my time. I can do my job that is 8 hours a day. I can do it 6 hours a day from home and actually have that time given back to myself and put that towards other projects like YouTube that are going to ultimately benefit me in the long run, and you will notice no disruption other than the fact that I'm not in the office. And you can pay me hourly and pay me less technically. That was me taking the initiative to say, I want to mitigate future anxiety in my life that I feel like is completely unnecessary. This is not an anxious means to an end. It's not me getting nervous before a big presentation that ends up being really great. This is completely wasted energy. It's burning my candle up, and I needed to like make a choice for my own mental health. Not everybody has those choices, but think around where you are and think about what's causing those sort of like giant wastes of your energy and see if there are things that you can tweak. There usually are. You only go around once. You have to ask for what you want, especially if it means saving your mental health. And so I have been off of any antidepressants. Ooh, by the way, getting off of Lexapro is horrible. Again, I don't want to talk about the weaning process and things like that because everybody's like, oh, you know, I just paced myself off. I don't care. I don't care. I just know that I had a really bad experience getting off of it and I will never do it again. But I've been off of any kind of antidepressant, I think, since I was like 28 or 29, So it's been like 3 or 4 years, I want to say. And it's what launched me into my personal practice, because much like psychedelics, which I've never done, but I've read a lot about, it's a shortcut to enlightenment, whereas Lexapro is a shortcut to a place where I could get in my own brain with effort or a shortcut of a drug. But the shortcut of the drug didn't give me the satisfaction of doing the work, which we talked about, and I didn't feel like I had tools that I could equip myself with to handle future unexpected problems. Whereas now I do, because I did the work to get there on my own. I feel like that whole process, the journey to get there, built my reserves up in a way where I feel like even if something bad happens or hits a nerve with me, I have the tools in my toolkit to be able to deal with that. Only a few more left, okay? Loanzilla says, do you have any tips for including your significant other in any of your self-help activity? My poor husband. I just drag him alongside me. I'm just like, we're gonna talk about feelings. And he's like, I don't want to talk about feelings. And I'm like, we're gonna do it. So men, if you are in a male-female relationship and you are the female in that relationship, men have been raised in our society. I do not feel uncomfortable making this generalization. Men have mostly been raised in American society or in Western society to fear weakness. They will be anything else but perceived as weak. And we have to keep that in mind as partners because they have been taught not to show their feelings. And we have to be merciful with them because they don't have the practice that women have, the way that we can just talk freely about how this makes me feel anxious and this makes me cry, and how do I recover from a moment where I've let myself be sad, and what do these feelings mean, like how, they're not there yet. They're not even in a I feel this way space yet. They are in a, well, feelings are bad kind of space. And so you have to take it from like an inner child standpoint a lot of times, especially if you kind of like have something ping up in your relationship, and that's what therapy really does, is it addresses the fact that most of the time we are dealing with something that was a defense mechanism that was built for survival when we were children, to not be bullied, not be perceived as weak, not to be an outlier in some way, not to be noticed, not to be abused, what have you, in order to keep ourselves from getting hurt in a way that we had been hurt before. And now as adults, all of those defense mechanisms stand, but we've forgotten why. And for me, I was bullied so much growing up. I'm such an easy target. I'm loud, I'm random, I'm weird, I'm wrong a lot. I mean, I've even been bullied in adulthood. And so it's something that's very like ingrained in me at this point that I have a high sensitivity for it. I won't even, this is really stupid, but like my husband will be like, hey, could you go get me a bowl of ice cream? And I'm like, I don't dote on people. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, that's bully stuff. That's like what bullies always do. They ask you to do things for them so that you can stay in their good graces. I don't do that. And he's like, I'm not bullying you. I was like, too sensitive. You know what I mean? Like I know my triggers. I know a lot of my triggers, and mine's been bullying. And I've always been a really weird person, which doesn't do super well in childhood. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I never really mastered suppressing that. So I do feel like I've kind of assimilated in a way where I feel like I can have normal conversations. I used to just, I don't know, I didn't get it growing up. Like I just didn't get it. I didn't get how people operated, and I was just very precocious and like off the wall and weird. But my friend Tiffany pointed out recently, she said, there is always a word that we grew up with being called, and we have to take that word that was a negative thing in our childhood and turn it into something that we own as adults. For her, it was bossy. She was told as a child that, it's a negative thing. You're bossy. Girls aren't supposed to be bossy. No one likes a bossy girl. And she's like, as I got older, I realized it's because I'm type A. I'm an earth sign. I'm really good at organizing things. I'm really good at being in charge. And she just owns the bossy thing now. And honestly, I've never thought of her as bossy. I've thought of her as being really, really good at leading. And so that to me is something that we kind of all, like, it's a really healthy exercise to do, to just isolate that one thing that hurt us as a child. It could be a lot of things, but for me, it was always weird. You're so weird. And it was like never said in a really nice way. I remember when I moved to Austin and someone said that I was a weirdo. I was like, what? I was like, I thought I'd gotten away from this. And my roommate, Josh, one of my favorite people in the world, and his friend Lauren, they were like, oh, no, you're in Austin now. We're all weirdos. And I was like, what? And they're like, it's a good thing. And so I think back on that now and I'm just like, that was kind of like a good omen, right? That I'm going in the right direction, I'm in the right place, I'm among the right people, because weird took on a whole new meaning of like, you're unique and there's a reason and it's cool, you know? And I definitely think that I'm still weird and it's still cool. But I was talking to my friend Cammie, and she is a Cancer. She's a Cancer. She's just a Cancer through and through. She's such a water sign. And throughout her entire childhood and upbringing and everything, the worst thing you could possibly be called was selfish. And she always says that me and like her other Aries friend in her life have been brought to her, she believes, by the universe to help her channel her inner selfishness, because she gives so much of herself that she never keeps any for herself. And so watching someone like me be shamelessly selfish, to, you know, for better or for worse, it helps her claim her life for herself in a lot of ways and be a little bit more shameless about asking for what she wants. So yeah, it's all about kind of showing that understanding and trying to put yourself in the mindset of the other person. That could be with a, you know, a loving relationship or a friendship relationship or a family relationship. Saphrodite says, my friends and I are in the unstable part of our 20s. How can we all help each other? You can help each other by being really understanding and forgiving. Because understand that any kind of like instability comes from insecurity or from old patterning. And when you act out and things like that, it's still part of your story. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean that you have to like then lie about that someday. It's like when people get fired or people get broken up with or something like that, they feel like, oh, this is like a negative reflection on me. And now I have to hide that. I have to lie about it. It's your story. Own it, you know? And I think that if I hadn't just gone completely crazy in my 20s, I never did like drugs because I was too scared, but I drank way too much, and I just was like a really crazy off the wall angry kid, and all of my feelings were right there at the surface in this really out of control way. I feel like that was the chaos that I needed, like the big bang, in order for things to evolve into pieces that I could understand. If I hadn't seen myself in extreme patterning situations, I'm not sure I would have ever been able to then isolate the things that I needed to work on and where to begin to start growing. So that unstable part of your 20s is really valuable, but it's also super helpful. First of all, that you even asked how to help one another. Give yourself some credit, because in your 20s, a lot of times after you've done something a little bit crazy and off the wall and unstable or whatever, you tend to want to hide and you tend to feel shame. The fact that you want to help one another and join together with your friends means that you have already overcome a large part of that shame and you understand where you're at. That self-awareness is a huge gift. It is a very large part of your ongoing mindfulness practice. So you've already cracked the code on that. So the main thing I would say is be really, really vulnerable with the people you know you can trust, because while we get the vulnerability hangover of overexpressing ourselves to people who we feel like don't deserve it necessarily, by the same token, when you find the right people who understand you and you can share those things with, you grow together by expressing the things that are uncomfortable to say out loud. As soon as you say the things that you're ashamed of out loud, they lose their power over you. And if you can form those kinds of relationships with people that can help you be that like sounding board for them and likewise, oh my gosh. People go their entire lives without those kinds of relationships. It's Christine TH 1911 says, what was your journey like when you got off of antidepressants? It was awful. It feels like your spine is falling out of your body. It feels like when, do you know those toys that like, it's like a guy on horseback and then there's a button on the bottom and you punch the button and the whole thing collapses? That's what it feels like when you're getting off of Lexapro. So it's called brain zaps. It's a blast. She also says, what tarot spread do you typically do? How frequently do you perform readings? I do readings when I do my yoga practice usually, and I will either pull one card or I will pull 3 cards. And sometimes I will pull like a clarification card if it's a 1-card draw. And I tend to have like not necessarily a yes/no question in my mind, but typically an an area of my life that I want to concentrate on, someplace that I want to kind of focus my energy because I'm feeling a little bit tense or confused about it. And then that helps me set my intention for my yoga practice. And understand that there's no such thing as a bad tarot card. It's more about whether it resonates with you that day or not. And if it doesn't, guys, it's not the gods speaking through your hands, okay? It's just a tarot card. Like, if you don't like it and you don't relate to it, then just draw a new card. You know what I mean? Shuffle and start over. It's not that big of a deal. But I do think that it is important to have a tarot deck that you like. The one that I use, I actually wanted to show you guys, is this one. Now I got powder all over it, but this is the Wild Unknown Tarot. A lot of you guys have seen this on my Instagram and you're like, what is that? You can get it on Amazon. They're really beautiful. They're so beautiful. I have seen a few others that I'm really interested in, but this is the one that, I don't know, it just, the imagery has always really, oh man, like look at that. Look at the Three of Pentacles is so pretty. They're a little bit dark, you know? I think that tarot it's a little bit occult. I'm okay with a little bit of dark. And I think that it, you know, helps me kind of channel both sides of any card. But I do recommend, if you decide to buy this deck, it does come with the little instruction book. Do a little bit more research. Like, it's a good place to start with the instruction book, but I definitely do more research on the cards after the fact, because after a while, I mean, it's just like a blurb. It just feels like reading a horoscope or something, and it's a little bit too like predict the future-y instead of tap into my brain-y. And I find it more helpful to go on like Biddy Tarot or Golden Thread or something like that, or Labyrinthos, the Labyrinthos app, and just search what that card means in sort of all of its forms, because a lot of times hearing it interpreted in a different way is going to help it resonate better with you. Just reading the same interpretation of a card over and over and over again in that little manual doesn't really help. So those are all the questions. I hope that this was at least somewhat helpful. Sometimes it's just helpful to hear these things out loud. We think them all the time, but it's nice to put them in the air and put them out into the universe, and for all of us to kind of like share in a common thought at the same time. I think there's power in that. If there's any thought that I can leave you guys with that is my overarching sentiment about self-love, it is that loving that future version of yourself, lamenting that past version of yourself, that's completely wasted energy. You have to be able to look at yourself in this current moment and love that person, because if you don't learn to love yourself in real time, you're never going to love yourself at all. You're going to get all the way to the end of your life and you're not going to have loved yourself, which is like a tragedy beyond all imagination to me. So look at that person that you see in the mirror right now, thank him or her or them in the mirror, and acknowledge that you are a unique being with your own story who deserves to be here for a reason. It is because you have a unique path that's not like anyone else's, and that's why it's important. So I love you guys so much. I hope that you feel my love through this video, because this is the kind of stuff that I feel like my work is for, is to build confidence, build you up, help you be the kind of person who feels beautiful no matter what. Makeup is just the icing on top. Makeup is so much fun. I love helping you guys and you guys helping me find some really, really great products and things that make us feel so beautiful. But just like skincare, guys, they say, you know, skincare first, self-love first, inner beauty first, and then we can move to skincare, and then we can move to makeup. So I hope that resonates with you guys. If it does, give it a thumbs up. If you guys want to keep hanging out with me on this channel, if you're new here and you are not already subscribed, hit the button down below and subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for sending me your questions. If you have any additional ones, feel free to leave them down below. We can do a future version of this video. So thank you so much, guys. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.